Welcome to Washington America Show with international multimedia journalist, multidimensional, multifaceted artist and director of Human Rights Justice Council USA, Dr. Kashif Sohail.
An election for President of the United States happens every 4 years on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. The next presidential election will be November 3, 2020. The election process begins with primary elections and caucuses. These are two methods that states use to select a potential presidential nominee. In general, primaries use secret ballots for voting. Caucuses are local gatherings of voters who vote at the end of the meeting for a particular candidate. Then it moves to nominate conventions, during which political parties each select a nominee to unite behind. During a political party convention, each presidential nominee also announces a vice presidential running mate.
The candidates then campaign across the country to explain their views and plans to voters. They may also participate in debates with candidates from other parties. During the general election, Americans go to their polling place to cast their vote for president. But the tally of those votes, the popular vote, does not determine the winner. Instead, presidential elections use the Electoral College. To win the election, a candidate must receive a majority of electoral votes. In the event no candidate receives a majority, the House of Representatives chooses the president and the Senate chooses the vice president.
Spring of the year before an election, candidates announce their intentions to run. Summer of the year before an election through spring of the election year, primary and caucus debates take place. January to June of an election year, states and parties hold primaries and caucuses. July to early September, parties hold nominating conventions to choose their candidates. September and October, candidates participate in presidential debates. Early November, Election Day. December, electors cast their votes in the Electoral College. Early January of the next calendar year, Congress counts the electoral votes. January 20th, Inauguration Day.
In other U.S. elections, candidates are elected directly by popular vote. But the president and vice president are not elected directly by citizens. Instead, they're chosen by electors through a process called the Electoral College. The process of using electors comes from the Constitution. It was a compromise between a popular vote by citizens and a vote in Congress.
Before the general election, most candidates for president go through a series of state primaries and caucuses. Though primaries and caucuses are run differently, they both serve the same purpose. They let the states choose the major political parties' nominees for the general election.
In other U.S. elections, candidates are elected directly by popular vote. But the president and vice president are not elected directly by citizens. Instead, they're chosen by electors through a process called the Electoral College. The process of using electors comes from the Constitution. It was a compromise between a popular vote by citizens and a vote in Congress.
Each state gets as many electors as it has members of Congress, House and Senate. Including Washington, D.C.'s 3 electors, there are currently 538 electors in all. Each state's political parties choose their own slate of potential electors. How does the Electoral College process work? After you cast your ballot for president, your vote goes to a statewide tally. In 48 states and Washington, D.C., the winner gets all the electoral votes for that state. Maine and Nebraska assign their electors using a proportional system. A candidate needs the vote of at least 270 electors, more than half of all electors, to win the presidential election. In most cases, a projected winner is announced on election night in November after you vote. But the actual Electoral College vote takes place in mid-December when the electors meet in their states.
While the Constitution doesn't require electors to follow their state's popular vote, many states' laws do. Though it's rare, electors have challenged those laws and voted for someone else. But in July 2020 the Supreme Court ruled PDF, download Adobe Reader, that those state laws are constitutional. Electors must follow their state's popular vote if the state has passed such a law.
It is possible to win the Electoral College but lose the popular vote. This happened in 2016, in 2000, and 3 times in the 1800s. If no candidate receives the majority of electoral votes, the vote goes to the House of Representatives. House members choose the new president from among the top 3 candidates. The Senate elects the vice president from the remaining top 2 candidates. This has only happened once. In 1824, the House of Representatives elected John Quincy Adams as president.
The Electoral College process is in the U.S. Constitution. It would take a constitutional amendment to change the process. For more information, contact your U.S. Senator or your U.S. Representative. Before the general election, most candidates for president go through a series of state primaries and caucuses. Though primaries and caucuses are run differently, they both serve the same purpose. They let the states choose the major political parties' nominees for the general election.
The president must be a natural-born citizen of the United States, be at least 35 years old, have been a resident of the United States for 14 years. Anyone who meets these requirements can declare their candidacy for president. Once a candidate raises or spends more than $5,000 for their campaign, they must register with the Federal Election Commission. That includes naming a principal campaign committee to raise and spend campaign funds.
Please share this video, subscribe to our channel.